Jesus Christ, okay. Damn. Why? How about no? Am I gonna review it? What's the cat gonna do? Nah. Not doing it. Screw it. I'm not gonna read Cat's Cradle. Wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry! Rule number 1 of owning a cat. They own you. Welcome to another installment of the Virgin Books Marathon. We have finished with the Time Worm series. We have now entered the Virgin Missing Adventures with Goth Opera. Now it's back to the Virgin New Adventures with the next trilogy in the series, Cat's Cradle. Now after I finished Time Worm and it was all over the place, what was I thinking about Cat's Cradle, eh? I gotta be honest, I just wanted to get through them. That's the honest answer, because with Time Worm at least, there was time to plan out the 4 books and connect them with each other. Even though they kind of felt, I could put some criticism on that explanation, but still, it had some time to be planned out. And at the end of the day, if that wasn't successful, the Time Worm series, then this wouldn't exist. The Virgin New Adventures, as we know it, wouldn't have existed. Maybe not even the Virgin Missing Adventures too. But with the Cat's Cradle trilogy, it was so last minute. It basically went of Peter Darville Evans liking the idea and the title of Cat's Cradle, which was introduced by Mark Platt, and then just turning it into a trilogy of 3 books, very loosely connected, mind you. So it was very last minute. So Andrew Cartmel and Andrew Hunt were like, oh, we're writing for a trilogy? Alright. So it was very, very last minute. So what about the 3 books, huh? My feelings and fears are exactly how Time Worm turned out. This one here looks and sounds complicated and convoluted as hell. So I was, in the back of my mind, a little concerned. Warhead was the one I was looking forward to the most. Just it being cyberpunk and dystopian really interests me. It's my cup of tea. But reviews, rather mixed. And Andrew Hunt's a rather unknown Doctor Who writer, and his only contribution, Witchmark, which he regretted it went into publication. Yeah, not good. But we will get to these at another day, because today it is Time's Crucible. Boy, do I have a lot to say about this novel. In fact, when I was scripting the review, it was double the length of all the book reviews I've done so far with this marathon. So this is one that's going to be quite a lengthy, in-depth book review, so prepare for that, eh? But before we get into the review of Time's Crucible, let's dive into some history of Cat's Cradle. The history of Cat's Cradle originally was an idea proposed in the Sixth Doctor's era in Season 22, submitted by Mark Platt along with Eric Sarwood. However, it never happened because it was too ambitious and didn't work with the show's budget. Cat's Cradle wasn't considered into production. Mark Platt was the main man for the idea of Cat's Cradle, including the monsters, the process we see in Time's Crucible. The Sixth Doctor alongside Mel would encounter a silver cat and acted as the spirit of the TARDIS itself, and Platt decided to take the Sixth Doctor in a more darker direction and the complete opposite of what Big Finish's direction that Colin Baker was more likened to, of a more softer and lighter Sixth Doctor. Peter Darvill Evans liked the idea so much that one book turned into a 3-part trilogy, though there were differences in comparison to the unproduced season 22 version of Cat's Cradle and the Virgin New Adventures trilogy, such as the role of the Silver Cat throughout the novels and the addition of 2 other authors, as I've named. Andrew Cartmel with Warhead, which starts its own trilogy titled The War Trilogy, nested in the Cat's Cradle trilogy, and Witchmark by the unknown Andrew Hunt. Cat's Cradle Time's Crucible focuses on the ancient history of Gallifrey, which has connections and links to Mark Platt's Lungbarrow, but isn't required to read Time's Crucible to enjoy Lungbarrow. It more teases the idea of the Doctor's past, the history of the Time Lords and the planet Gallifrey. Look at it as just world building and lore in the wilderness years. Ace and the Doctor discover a strange and alien presence that has infected the TARDIS. When destroyed, the Doctor completely disappears and leaving Ace all alone, and access to the TARDIS is denied, while a silver cat is following him. Ace is all alone and lost in an ancient city, with the tyrannical leech-like monsters known as the Process having dominion over the planet. Now on paper, it does sound like a fascinating idea, and Cat's Cradle does play a role in starting many overarching plots within the New Adventures, the one I've just mentioned with the War Trilogy, the Infected TARDIS arc, the continuation of the story of the Doctor and Ace's relationship from Time Worm, and also building the storyline that Ghostlight would have covered and future seasons if Doctor Who didn't cancel after Survival. So it sounds good, doesn't it? Well, I hear different. So, on the surface level, Time's Crucible sounds flipping epic. It sounds brilliant. 7th Doctor lore and world building. Heavy duty stuff in the wilderness years. I will say this straight away before even beginning the review of Time's Crucible. This is not beginner friendly, this book. Stay the hell away from that. Not insinuating that it's bad, but it's just heavy duty with lore and world building. And it's heavy. And I just don't recommend it for anybody who's just new to the Virgin New Adventures or the books at all. I wouldn't recommend it. I was a little bit nervous about it. It's because of the reviews. Now, I always stay open-minded. But something I see repeated a lot of Time's Crucible is complicated, convoluted, and vague. And boring on the top of it too. So, apparently it's a slog to get through, which just rips your mind in 1,000 pieces. You couldn't even comprehend what the hell Mark Platt was on about. Many people loved the Ghostlight plot, and unfortunately wasn't completed and unfinished in the TV canon. Sadly, my expectations of Cat's Cradle is rather shaken, and Warhead is the only one that truly interests me. Wishmark, on the other hand, yeah, it was regretted even going into publication. So, despite my shaky opinions on Cat's Cradle, was it a success? Well, that's what we're going to find out. So, here is the in-depth review of Cat's Cradle, Time's Crucible by Mark Platt. Why did the Doctor leave? Throughout Doctor Who's canon, and referenced way back in the first Doctor Who story, An Unearthly Child provided one of the most fascinating mysteries within Doctor Who. The character's origins, the motivations for leaving, and the apparent demons the Doctor left behind. Time's Crucible, in a way, is a loose prequel and nod to the notorious Lungbarrow. Time's Crucible alludes to one of the reasons of why the Doctor left the Time Lord's order. The Doctor references his opinions of the Time Lords and that they were better during what he records as the Dark Times, the time of chaos and superstition. That's why the Doctor left. He couldn't just sit still and not be a part of the universe, but to see the universe, something the Time Lord Society very much opposed. So Time's Crucible adds very important plot points and the history of the Time Lords and ancient Gallifrey. If I could describe this book in one word, it would be dense. Perfect word to describe Time's Crucible. It's a heavy book in terms of its world building, exposition, and establishing the continuity with Gallifrey and the Time Lords. Yeah, this book throws a lot at you. In terms of the different settings, timelines, the long list of characters and what their role is within the story, their motivations, part Rassilon plays, which is the subplot in the book, the Pythia and who are they and how they related to Gallifrey, the ancient rulers before the Time Lords were even a thing. Also teases the Other, which is a name which you will see mentioned throughout the Virgin New Adventures. Also the Process depicted on the front cover, and all these different characters of the Timescape timeship. And that's not even it with the characters, there's even more characters related to the ancient Gallifrey part, because the characters I just mentioned are just the crew of the Timescape timeship, which plays a significant role of the whole point of the title, Time's Crucible. So Time's Crucible begins with the depictions of ancient Gallifrey, and some of the characters like Prodonius being the hero of ancient Gallifrey. Prodonius was one of the few characters who initially rejected Rassilon of a neo-technologist society, but this later changed. So Rassilon was around during the ancient years of Gallifrey, who had his supporters and disagreeers with his political, technological and societal goals, that Rassilon wanted to shape Gallifreyan society in his own image. And that image would be Gallifrey as depicted in the TV series. The Neo-Technologists were a group on ancient Gallifrey led by Rassilon himself to bring the new age of Gallifrey, who were in favour of science and technology, and opposed magic and superstition. That's what the Pythia reign believed in. They objected to Gallifrey embracing science and technology, and seen Rassilon as a direct threat to the Pythia reign. Some of this and Omega's involvement is detailed a bit in the Big Finish audio of the same name, so that's an audio to check out, which has some nice nods to the connections of this lore that I've just said in Time's Crucible. What was originally the High Council of the Time Lords was originally known as the Court of Principals, an organisation which governed academia. The Court of Principals made a character we are introduced named Vale a member of the Timescape timeship, and will be a significant role when meeting the 7th Doctor, who witnesses the TARDIS appear right in front of her eyes in ancient Gallifrey, and it looks like it collided with the timeship. Do you know what helped me to actually understand Time's Crucible? It's actually scripted in the review, so I said, oh yeah, that's why it happened. I had a pretty good reference to go back to. Believe me, if for example you read a third of the book and you put it down for a week and then came back to it again, you will forget details, and you will be lost, because flipping hell, does this book, it's so vague in some places, and it throws so many goddamn concepts at you. It just gets overbearing. It's a bit much. And yeah, when people say that it feels complicated, it's convoluted, and it's vague in places, yeah, you kind of have to storm yourself through the book, or do what I do is write scripts to better picture the book of what's happening. It's a good reference, but not everyone does that, of course, because I'm the one actually reviewing books here. But yeah, what everyone says about it, but it's dense and it's a difficult read, and yeah, it's true. So Ace and the Doctor are enjoying a meal in London at the Alaska, not long after the events of defeating the entity of the Time Worm. And Cat's Cradle does, from the get-go, continue what Time Worm established of the relationship between Ace and the Doctor. And Time's Crucible has some pretty awesome writing to describe the situation and the events of what transpired in Time Worm, and will now be explored in Cat's Cradle, and eventually we will see the big impact in Nightshade and Love and War. The Doctor, outwardly, was a clownish, eccentric, a genius in human terms, kind, compassionate, spiky, sometimes angry, but warm and a friend. Travelling in space, Ace had a closer look through the gaps. She glimpsed a darker and noticeable intellect, very alien, detached and powerful, as always contemplating the true extent of the Doctor's abilities and what he was capable of. She fights the idea off as just being in her imagination, but sometimes the darkness inside the Doctor she picks up on. Is the Doctor more dangerous compared to the evil he attracted and opposed? So, even though I think Time Worm is all over the freaking place, I do recommend you read Time Worm before you pick up on Cat's Cradle. The whole build-up with the arc of the Doctor and Ace would just feel a little bit more real, authentic. You get the impact a lot more. But then again, I say you should read Nightshade when you're beginning books. You can read it regardless. It's just if you were to read Time Worm and Cat's Cradle and then get into Nightshade, the impact of the situation would just be a lot more greater. But it really is standalone. I just feel with Cat's Cradle is a little bit different, I would say. Pick up on what Time Worm establishes and you should be good to go with Cat's Cradle. So with all this happening, with the sky turning orange and very unfamiliar events happening while they were just enjoying a meal, we see a small but noticeable silver cat staring at the Doctor and Ace. And when this played out, the Doctor had some form of an attack and feeling intense anxiety about the TARDIS. So this book layering so many questions out of the gate. It goes for a vague direction of what the book might do, which some may or may not like. Because in terms of reviews, some people just don't like vague writing. Some people like writing which is slightly vague as it just opens interpretation, but when it's constantly vague, and it's like, okay, can you just give us some answers? Don't want to be in the darkness. It's like being blindfolded and walking through a cave. So it's not going to be to everyone's cup of tea, the writing style. Because at the end of the day, Revelation and Time's Crucible are quite similar. You're trying to figure out the answers to these various questions. And I would say Revelation was better done in that department than Time's Crucible. Because Time's Crucible, it was vague and complicated. In Revelation, Paul Cornell wrote it in a way where he was just 2 steps ahead away from the reader. And I felt like it worked more doing it that way compared to being vague, extremely vague, in Time's Crucible. However, by saying all that, And pardon my French here, but the prologue was fucking incredible. Absolutely loved it. It was so captivating, so interesting. The writing was top notch. Fair play. The prologue, god damn, I loved it. The Doctor's concerns in an internal monologue of seeing the TARDIS in danger and just slowly being destroyed from the inside. You can see the desperation. You literally hear it from the book of the Doctor feeling defeated and just without purpose, without the TARDIS, which plays very well on like the John Pertwee era, for example. When he was exiled, he felt like he was in solitary confinement and purposeless without a TARDIS, because his purpose is seeing the universe. That's what gives him a purpose, motivation. So without it, the Doctor is almost in an anxious position, because if he loses the TARDIS, he loses his own identity, and the book seriously captures that. Solid writing, and writing I would just love to see back on screen again, because it's just so captivating. You also see Ace seeing these visions of her own mum too. I really like the setup, and it's also kind of building up on Ace's fears and some of the concepts too, which Ghostlight did bring up. Never really explored because it was unfinished. Even in the script form as well, there was so much of Ghostlight which was cut out and not used. So this prologue was kind of building up into what the front cover predicts, and also the bio where it says you're on your own, Ace. Would I call this a Doctor-like book? Sort of. Not fully. He's not in it for like over 200 pages or anything like that. That's actually not the case. But the role of the Doctor, like the answers to about the stolen future, which I'll get to. Of course, I'm not going to say because it's spoilers. But this prologue is building up on the idea that Ace is going to be on her own. And the way Mark Platt did it, I would say the prologue was freaking perfection. So this book couldn't possibly flop, right? Right? But as I stated, a lot of ideas in this novel, such as the lore that was going to be established in Ghostlight and continuing after season 26, but Doctor Who just went into the gutter before any of this content was ever covered. That's what I kind of like about the Wilderness Years. It gives the writers creative freedom to do what the hell they want, especially in the Virgin New Adventures. This can also be a negative at the same time. I'm kind of referencing future books here. But also, it's building up Lungbarrow too, because we have references to the House of Bly Ledge. Now, what does that mean? But the more important thing to focus on here is the word house. What does it mean on Gallifrey? The House of Bly Ledge, the House of Forward, the House of Lungbarrow. Related by family, and teases the idea of the looms. Something you may or may not accept within Doctor Who's canon, but the houses within Gallifrey and Rassilon's plan for a neo-technologist society with the looms is foreshadowed in Time's Crucible. But then when chapter 4 kicks in, man, do things get odd. Really odd. And it's a little creepy too. I can imagine this scene of chapter 4 playing in my head as a Big Finish audio. And the build up to the whole Cat's Cradle saga and the insinuation to a threat being characterised as a cat-like hissing and the scratching of claws on metal inside the TARDIS was an awesome scene. To see the Doctor this vulnerable on his ship being attacked by something completely unknown is a scary thought. And leaves the Doctor in a state of desperation and being defeated, filling with anxiety, and says rather cruel lines to Ace during this moment. It plays on the relationship with the Doctor and the TARDIS itself, and that it's the only thing that gives him a purpose, and the reason for leaving Gallifrey, escaping his demons, which kind of builds up on what the Doctor was on about during An Unearthly Child. So without the TARDIS, he's lost, and it's a sense of purgatory. Writing, awesome. It shows And this is what I really like about the Virgin New Adventures. It just shows a flawed character. There's still someone deep inside is a good person. I just always find characters like that just so much more damn interesting, rather than just a flawless good character who can do no wrong. That's just such a flippin' boring protagonist. Now we want something a little bit more than that, and that's what I like about the creative freedom of the Virgin New Adventures. But then again, there are things the Virgin New Adventures do which the TV series just simply couldn't do, and I get that. I 100% get that. I feel like Doctor Who has lost his touch in doing that. Even in the early series of the new series, it did capture that. So credit to it. But now, no, it doesn't. And I kind of miss that writing. Ironically, in my opinion, the Wilderness Years has been the best in capturing that side of the Doctor compared to anything else. Controversial? Maybe. That's what I think about it. So I am picking up on the narrative of what the Virgin New Adventures and what Peter Darvel Evans wanted to achieve. The continuation of some of the elements that were rather vague and incomplete in Ghostlight and what would have been after season 26. The Virgin New Adventures were going for a more darker direction of the Doctor, but not in a way that made him out like a villain, but flawed. A more real version of the character himself. Referenced the dark depictions of Gallifrey and its corruption, which we've seen by the Doctor, the Master, various splinter factions and cults fled the Time Lord Society. With malicious intentions or not, why did he do it? Why are all these other Time Lords doing it too? And going their own way? To me, I just find that fascinating. I love a good bit of world building and lore. It's why I love the Virgin New Adventures, it's why I like the BBC books, and it's why I love Big Finish too, especially the early ones too. Flipping hell, were they just awesome with the lore. But back to chapter 4 specifically, solid writing, I just flipping loved it. And seeing the Doctor just disappear and walking into a corridor which almost looks like a void, because all the power is just now gone in the TARDIS and it's silent. It's almost the feeling of being too quiet. That gives you the anxiety that there is something in the TARDIS. So it's kind of like the edge of destruction a little bit this moment, but amplified in the creepy factor. So seeing the TARDIS breaking down, parts of the TARDIS which are just completely vanishing, something's manipulating the TARDIS. And the last line of the Doctor leaving the TARDIS, yeah, it does pack a punch. Now Ace is alone in a creepy, cold, and lifeless TARDIS. She is frightened, almost lost, with the Doctor vanishing. It's because of all that's happened so far. It hits so damn well. Because even though the Doctor showed sides of his character which Ace doesn't like and still contemplating within her head, but there are dark, quite malicious intentions with the Doctor, being a manipulator, a schemer, but still has faith and trust and sees the Doctor as a friend. So at this point, Ace still has friendship and trust in the Doctor, and her having arguments and disagreements with the Doctor about the thing he did in previous novels, but didn't cloud her faith in the Doctor. Finding the Doctor was her top priority, and the last sightings of the Doctor was disappearing down a TARDIS hallway. So what's happening with the TARDIS? It appears to almost be corroding, and nothing but scraps and parts scattered around what appears to be a desolate wasteland with ominous tall buildings around. This is where Ace sees and comes into the presence of the process, which the book has been hyping up, along with the subplot on ancient Gallifrey. It seems like characters like Vale, Shonzi, Omni, are describing the process as tyrannical rulers of the planet. The characters I just mentioned are part of the Timescape timeship, which the term scaphe is Greek for vessel or hull, aka timeship, a prototype developed by Rassilon himself. But that's content I will simply leave to another time. But we will bring back the focus on the process, a parasitic life form and called a datavore, which is a parasite that feeds and consumes information. Which, if you look back at the beginning of the novel and paid attention, because flipping hell you need to, the Doctor said his thoughts and knowledge was being taken away from him when he was being mentally attacked and the TARDIS was breaking down. So the Doctor's symptoms and the mental capabilities of the process makes you believe the leech monsters were responsible for the TARDIS being attacked. Perhaps. Certainly makes sense to me, but then again, something weird with a strange silver cat that keeps showing up. And even showed up in the TARDIS while it was breaking down and seemed to be rather aggressive. The silver cat depicted here, we don't really know its role, and it's nothing like the original unproduced season 22 version of it being the heart of the TARDIS, which I am led up to believe. The role is completely up in the air, and to be honest, I wasn't really convinced if it was truly a villain, so I was keeping my mind open. It's made ambiguous for a reason. Now to the Timescape crew, which is just a section of supporting characters you follow in this book. Believe me, there is a lot of characters to follow, which can get rather extensive following all these characters and who they're aligned with, their allegiance, collaborators, intentions, and so on. So we have Shonzi, a young Gallifreyan who's a pilot, Rilgus, who is the battery, Sherpal being the regulator, and Nonni being second in command and member of the House of Bly Ledge, related to Gallifrey and the Time Lords and the Looms, and Peccary too, being from the House of Forfordin. And then the big one to focus on is Vale, who is a quantum theorist and was made by the Court of Principals to be a member of the Timescape. But it seems that this character has ulterior motives to sabotage the ship and coincidentally crash right into the 7th Doctor's TARDIS. Oh, how convenient and odd. So she's like the main character on the Timescape to focus on. In other words, how I would describe Vale, she's just a ginormous douche. She is a douche of what she did. And I won't go too much into her roles and intentions and what she wants to do. But basically, she sabotaged the ship because she felt that she didn't get along with the other crew. Jeez Louise, what's wrong with you? I mean, at least try. Now, the longer that this book goes on for, it can get extremely difficult to follow it. Because these characters are referencing so many different moments that happened. And it seems that, and this is very odd, there seems to be multiple different versions of these characters, but at different points in time. And the only part I will disclose is this without spoiling it. You have younger versions, older versions, and elder versions. And yeah, if you glossed over that, you will probably end up getting confused because at one moment they're disclosed as Time Lords, but then when you go to a different version of these characters, they don't even know what Ace is on about when talking about Time Lords. And you would feel like it's a contradiction, but no, it actually means something. There are multiple different versions of these characters just at different points in time in the same place. Actually no, it's not a times crucible, it's a times mindfuckery. So Ace in this cold, desolate city is found by the character Shonzi, who knows Ace's name and the Doctor too. Again, this plays on a role of these different versions in time of these characters, because then they go, I don't know who you are, but oh, I also know who you are. Yeah. If you just have a break from this book for a week and come back to it, I guarantee you will just be completely lost. I read it in 3 days. I was like, Jesus Christ. This book is a lot. You then understand more of Vale's position, having connections to the process. But I have to be honest, the reason why she committed sabotage in the first place, in the beginning of the novel, just because she didn't like the crew, is almost comical. She's just a sensitive, egocentric douchebag, and also a giant, selfish prick for what she did. It is then alluded, according by Peccary, that the Doctor had a great battle with the process. We understand no context behind this encounter, but besides Shonzi discussing it. And apparently swept him away and the future was stolen. Certain characters grew dark thoughts about the Doctor, and it ended with the process enslaving the society, and some characters sold out the population for their own freedom. Yeah, Vale. She's a prick. The future was stolen from the Doctor apparently and insinuated as Cruel, who caused this entire event. But why? Yep, that's Mark Platt's writing for you. Comparing this to Revelation, I just preferred Revelation so much more. It felt like I was enjoying it. This is going to sound really bad. I was enjoying finding out the answers to the various questions I had in Revelation. But this, it was almost like my job. But because that's what my job is using my brain constantly. And this was just work. Time's Crucible is work to get through and figure out. So I fully understand why people just can't get behind the vague writing. Anyway, totally unrelated to what I just said, there's a pretty cool chapter name. I think it's one of the most coolest chapter names I've ever seen in a book. Funny thing is, they're not even in the book, it's just referenced. Daleks don't like finger biscuits. What a cool title for a chapter. The Daleks have no role in this book. So it's not a spoiler, it's just a silly title name. I just found that so bizarre. I was like, wait, what? The Daleks are in this? What are the Pepperpots doing in this book? It's just a funny title. Saying that, now things really feel confusing now. The book is now referencing the Doctor was destroyed in the beginning before time even existed. So, how can the Doctor steal the future from the process and die in the beginning of time before it even existed, and yet people know about him? Mark Platt, you're making my brain glitch. It feels like my feelings for Time's Crucible are all over the freaking place. I love it, but I don't love it. It's really well written, but it's vague. And it's driving me crazy. This book flips around like a fish out of water. I really do not know what to make of this novel. I've never been so confused about where I'm gonna put this book as a rating. So many mixed feelings with this. Because there's things I really like about it. I think the book in many ways is very well written. Especially with the position of Ace. Her position in the book is your position too. You don't have a clue and are completely in the dark. Blindfolded in a cave and you've got to make your way out. But the Timescape crew seem agitated because they are the ones pushing Ace for answers about what has happened. And how to get the stolen future back. So everyone's just all frustrated with each other. Ace is frustrated because the characters don't know what the Doctor is. They're frustrated because they don't know where the Doctor is and Ace doesn't know either. Nobody knows. So Ace doesn't believe the stories the characters like Shanzi and Nonni and Peccary are saying, who seem to be unnerved by the Doctor's so-called intervention of creating this whole situation. Time's Crucible is doing very well, expanded the storyline of what Time Miriam alluded to. Now we are witnessing supposedly very dark depictions of the Doctor. How could he do such a thing? And it seems that nobody knows where the Doctor is besides, again, supposedly killed before time itself. So this really does explore the whole plot of the Doctor and the insinuation he's been a manipulative puppet master from what the Timescape crew have been alluding to. How is all that revealed? It's for you, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, where does the freaking cat go into play? It's almost acting like a guide. I'm not sure it will turn out to be a villain. It's almost like a guide. So maybe it was like not duplicating the idea of what was established, what was going to be established in the unproduced version of Cat's Cradle being the heart of the TARDIS, but it seems to be guiding Ace in like the direction to find the Doctor, for example. Which it comes to a very interesting scene of just seeing the Doctor as a figure with a clock in the middle of his face that says 11:56. And he also turns around as well, which is kind of creepy and unnerving, that scene. I liked it. But then the cat was aggressive at some moments, and then in the beginning, when making eye contact with the Doctor, he has an attack. So again, the cat is more of a mystery, but I was thinking it's kind of acting like a guide. But the first 100 pages of the book were pretty good, but flipping confusing as hell in some places. And I can see why people have a hard time with the book. It doesn't help that it goes from one thing to another thing in a very vague way. For example, the Doctor and Ace seem to be in the same place, but are they in the same timeline? It's not really implied. It's left vague and it's very jumpy between all these different timelines in the same place, being younger, older and elder. That's one example for you. After the first 100 pages mark, the book got padded, unfortunately, and stretching this plot line of the Doctor is evil. The process wants the stolen future, and the characters hounding on Ace for answers because of her connections with the Doctor. It's one of the few instances I was feeling in the moment. I was then struggling with the book and was finding it very repetitious and boring. Also, pretty taxing to read. Yeah, this was like just over a third of the way through the book. Pages 100 to 150 before the Doctor makes his reveal. God damn, it was so repetitious, the dialogue. So slow, so boring. And I almost felt like DNF in the book. I'm glad I didn't, and I'm not supposed to because I'm doing a marathon after all. Unless the book drives me freaking insane. I didn't DNF it, and I continued, and I'm glad I did because right after I continued it, the Doctor showed up and things started moving. So, for me at least, other people might have difference of opinion here, but pages 100 to 150, god damn were they boring and slow and repetitious. It was a drag. 100 to 150 and some parts of pages 200 and over, yeah, that's where I think it slogs the most. It's another common opinion people have about Time's Crucible. It can be very slow. But I'm glad that I didn't pull the plug and said, fuck it. This book was driving me to Bourville. And it almost did. The moment I picked it up again, it did pick up as the Doctor was now being featured in the novel and got excited again. During how I felt with the prologue. The Doctor right now is surprised and taken back by all this talk of him being in a battle fighting the process and stealing the future. He has no knowledge about the situation, so is in the same position as all of us, including the reader and Ace. All the other characters, the Doctor, just everybody just doesn't know what's going on. So where I struggle the most with Time's Crucible is the middle portion of the novel. before the Doctor is being revealed. It was just a flipping drag. But I haven't talked much about the subplot, which is ancient Gallifrey with the Pythia and Rassilon. Its early history of Gallifrey and establishing the lore regardless of what people say is canon or not, and who or what the Time Lords are, the origins and the roots of their history. But then again, you don't need to read Time's Crucible to enjoy Lungbarrow. I will make that statement again, so don't worry. So if you got a original copy of Lungbarrow, then congratulations, you don't need to read Time's Crucible. Just read Lungbarrow, just do it. And you might as well keep it because it's worth freaking more than gold at this point. And yeah, this is the book. This is the biggest criticism most people have with the book. And it's what I have with the book too. It is so convoluted. It's confusing in places. Even though I wasn't lost, the script and a review kind of helped me in that department, and I just read it in 3 days. Kind of surprised when I did, really. Yeah, I agree with the majority with this one. It is all those things. Confusing collection of emotions with Time's Crucible. In so many ways I love it, in so many ways I don't. All over the freaking place. And the thing is, what isn't helpful is some of the parts of this novel which are teased and done rather vaguely. It's never resolved. It's never brought up again. So that's just going to confuse you further, because you're going to go back into the book and say, where was this concluded? Well, some parts of it wasn't. And it's either concluded by just not being concluded at all, referenced in future novels, or brought up in Lungbarrow. Again, some people are like that, but some people just drive you freaking crazy. But yeah, just jumping around with all these characters in different points in time, with the Timescape, the Time Lord prototype ship, but in younger versions and older versions and elder versions, it's even the same thing with the process monsters too. You have younger processes who can change and alter time. You have older processes who can travel to before the beginning of time, where the Doctor apparently died through this battle with them. Ancient Gallifrey is full of different time paradoxes with these characters, and broken down into 3 different paradoxes, as I stated: younger, older and elder. So that's just some explanation behind the mindfuckery of this book. And to be honest, I didn't really scratch the surface of piecing together this book, because that's for you to solve rather than me just tell you about it. The final lead up into the novel with the ending past 200 pages is really to bring the battle to the process, and also Vale, who is just a scumbag of a character who sold out the entire population of the planet for her own freedom. She's a scumbag. Do you know what? I'm absolutely freaking exhausted talking about this book. My throat hurts, and damn, this is gonna be a long video. I can already feel it. I have never been so confused about what to think about a book. Kind of get an idea of what I would rate it. Would I read this book again? Would I be motivated to read Time's Crucible again? With Exodus, Revelation and Goth Opera, I would. With Apocalypse and Genesis, I would not. Would I read this again? No. I would not like to read Time's Crucible again. Even though in so many ways I enjoyed it, it seems that the negatives and the problems I had with it negate what I liked about it. I was going to kind of mention some other things, but I'm just going to leave it there, because my throat is kind of sore from talking about this novel for such a long period of time. It feels like it's been over an hour unscripted, unedited rather, the video. So I'm going to leave it there for Time's Crucible. Overall, what did I think about Time's Crucible? In so many ways, it has brilliant concepts and ideas which were unfortunately cut from Ghostlight. and what would be after season 26, supposedly. But a few more things added to it as well by Mark Platt. Not everything is just uncut content. Ultimately, I just couldn't get down with this novel. I just couldn't get down with it. It's one of the few instances where I feel tired about reviewing a book. Last time I felt that was in Thespians. I would rate it nowhere near Revelation, Exodus, or Goth Opera, so I know it's not getting a 9, it's not getting an 8. I kind of put it in the ballpark of Apocalypse, but this had so much better ideas compared to Apocalypse. That was just filler. This is better than Apocalypse, but I feel like I dislike it more. I feel like I would hate to read this more than Apocalypse, but it has better ideas than Apocalypse. This is going to be a super generous rating, but I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Because there is moments in this book, a lot of this book I do enjoy. And I would rate it over average. I just couldn't get down with it. It can get no more than a 6. Yeah, that's what I'm going to rate it. I feel like I'm being kind of generous there, to be honest. But that's how I feel. I'm going to put it as a 6. Because I do think it's better than Apocalypse, but I feel like I would be more inclined to read Apocalypse more than Time's Crucible, because this was just more difficult to get through, as in to just put everything together and kind of understand this vague writing that Mark Platt likes. Then again, I've read Lungbarrow and it was nothing as dense and complicated and convoluted than this. And that's it. That is Time's Crucible. It seems that my fears and concerns, yeah, they were true. So next, I gotta be honest, I'm not really hopeful about Cat's Cradle. Because even though Warhead intrigues me the most out of all of them, its reviews are rather mixed, but I'm optimistic. I'll stay optimistic. This one, however, most people rate it the worst. Oh dear. But we'll stay positive. So the next installment of the Virgin New Adventures marathon is Warhead. Don't screw me over and destroy my mind like Time's Crucible did. Thanks for watching. Yeah, I'm freaking dead now. I'm freaking dead by doing that review. That was work. Things I do for you guys. Jeez. The video's over now. You can just leave. I'm just going to leave. So long. God blimey. I'm looking at the time of this video. 1 hour and 17 minutes and 43 seconds. Jeez Louise. What a review.